Sometimes to get an AR to operate cycle reliably, it can be a real pain in the gas. Notice, this video is not intended to instruct. Its purpose is entertainment. It has no warranty, either written or implied, and none shall be inferred. If you haven't watched the preceding show, I would suggest you do so. I try to speak ad nauseum on how the gas system actually operates. And if you can understand that, the other secondary information that goes with bolt lockup, the gas key, the valving, that sort of thing, it will give you some level of information that I'm going to rely on you knowing as we go. Maybe we'll start looking at the position of the gas port along the barrel and what effect that has on it. Take a look at this picture here. Now, it's actually of two SBR barrels, exactly the same length, 10.5 inches, but the gas position is in a different spot in each one. The 300 blackout is much closer to the breech. This barrel has been designed primarily for subs, and they're trying to get a longer stroke on it with lower pressures. I think that's what they have in mind. Now, if we look at the Comical, the 7.62 by 39 above it, we see it's got a much shorter stroke. It's only about 2.5 inches. It's a fairly high pressure round, and we got a short stroke, and we just want to make sure we can move that out. Now, steel cases work pretty good as far as unlocking in general, and you're never going to use the things again, so you toss them away. They work pretty good. And if you use a lot of Russian kind of made, manufactured com block ammunition, that's okay with you. If you're doing a lot of brass and you're trying to shoot blackouts super, that's a higher pressure, you might find some overgassing situation leading to swipes. Yes, you might go to the previous video and check that back out. If you're trying to go subs and you're running a fairly low pressure, 28,000 copper versus 48,000 copper, that's quite a bit of pressure difference. Now, you're not going to change assuming we don't change the port, we don't change the stroke, you can see how you may be overgassed if you're, for subs, or undergassed if you're shooting subs in a setup you've got set for supers, because it may be too restrictive. Vice versa, you may bend up too hot on one end. It's kind of hard to get one that works universally. So they're sort of like a lady in her shoes. She's got a different set of shoes for different occasions. Well, same thing goes with a lot of these barrels. You can optimize them for one purpose or another. Now, look at the distance, the relative distance the ports are from the barrel end, because that's going to give you an indication of the stroke. Now, if we go immediately from that to gas blocks, one of the most common issues that's easy to do if you don't have a dimple barrel, and do you remember dimple jig? From the dimple jig video, what we have here is a regular front rail type of gas block. And I took it off of one of these that used the old style handguard. Now, one of the things you can do is, if you don't have a dimple, it's easy to take one of these dudes and cant it right or left as it's on the barrel, okay? And what that will do is that'll sometimes help cut off the hole. You may not want to do that. You may not be aware you've done that, especially if you have like a rifle length, a mid length, or something like that, where you're significantly further down the barrel. This little screw I put in this to make this, and you can go back and watch the dimple jig video if you like, is because we have to go through there to make the gas port hole on the other side that matches up with the gas port. And here we see a picture. I've actually got it such that you turn this thing upside down, screw it into the gas port with the pointy part, and then what you do is you're able to kind of make your own dimple. But if you don't have a dimple, it can be off and on this way. It also helps set it up in and out if your hole is in the correct position. Now let me show you this picture right here. Here are 3 different low profile gas blocks. and they're nearly the same, but they're off maybe a little bit. One of them has to be a little bit longer and it cheats the hole. Now, the gas alignment is pretty easy to deal with because you have a bigger hole on the upper part of the gas block. Let me show you this picture here. Now what happens is you have a little bit of play left and right around the barrel, clockwise, counterclockwise, but you also have a little distance in and out toward the stop, toward where the barrel is larger diameter and where the gas block stops. So that can be real handy. But a common problem you might have here, if you use this kind of a configuration and you go to a typical low profile block, you're probably not going to have too much trouble cutting off the hole. But one thing I've seen people do is using one of these, they don't account for the thickness of the handguard end. And if you don't, what can happen is you can end up going too far back this way and you're kind of cutting off the hole. You're not aligning it correctly. So that can be a little bit, but it takes some effort to get that hole off that much. But that can be an issue, that you're simply kind of cutting off the gas port at that time. Eventually, you may get to the point where you're convinced that you need to open up the gas port. But as they say in wood shop, measure twice, cut once, because it's hard to find a bored stretcher. You have the same problem with a gas port. So you do want to spend an adequate amount of time with different boxed ammunition that you bought at the store so that you have a baseline to something that's been manufactured SAMI approved. And then if you can't work that, you try different magazines. Some of them will actually have a greater drag. You want to check instantly for the undergas sign. The main number one undergas sign people do is they'll put a magazine in there and we'll shoot it. We want to make sure we have enough pressure to drive the bolt back that it catches on the bolt catch, because you can actually cycle back and forth and it be coming back just enough to catch the base, run it up in it, run the next up in the chamber. So you really have to put one at a time. Fire it, does it lock back? Put another in there, fire it, does it lock back? Even with a standard box ammunition on a new setup where everything's nice and tight and it's got to break itself in, you might find the problem resolves itself. If you're unsure that it's ever going to resolve itself and you believe that you have an undergassed situation, you will have to open it up. But why do that if you can do something else? Here is a non-surgical solution, as they would say if you were a doctor, the doctor of boom. Okay, this thing is called a crank. It causes an increased back pressure on the system. It has effective barrel length built into it, and they're used primarily on short barrel rifles because short barrel rifles tend to be a little harder to work with. Okay, the way a crank differs from just a simple muzzle device, which it is a basic muzzle device, but it's a little bit different, and it creates this made out of two pieces, and it creates a little back pressure chamber, and as the gases zoom into it, it comes up and it hits the chamber. It can't go anywhere, so it kind of reflects back. There's a reflexive wave that wants to kick back, and it keeps a little more pressure up on the gas system. And you may find that by putting a crank on there that you can actually get it to cycle and operate reliably with the ammunition that's almost feeding correctly every time but still not quite locking back. You can do that. Also, if you have one that you've put an adjustable gas block on and you have a suppressor on and you've backed the gas off so that it works without putting so much in your face so it's still locking back, cycling back with the suppressor, you can also, if you take that off, if you have a direct thread type, direct thread crank on there, and it may actually still be enough for you to operate. So that's, something to think about. If it works in those cases, you might put one on one where you're using a particularly light bullet. It's fast, the stroke is short, it's out the barrel, and you might move to a heavier configuration, heavier bullet. So once you've done all the things that you know how to do to keep from drilling it out, that's where you just cross your fingers say a little prayer, and drill it out. In this picture I put up, we're discovering the difference between a taper drill and a straight drill. The manufacturer, they did put a little note on it, it won't cycle standard boxed ammunition, but it will cycle, I guess, the big stuff. Well, I found it wouldn't cycle either. Kind of irritated me a little bit. And I went through my standard thing of shooting bullets and make sure everything's broken up, make sure the bolt is clean and flexes easily in and out, it cams over, it twists, everything, all that good stuff works. But one of the problems it had was, in getting it to feed, was not a gas problem. The problem seems to be that and this is just my opinion, seemed to be too tight, as if they shaved down or put on the short side of the tolerance so that your general run-of-the-mill bolt had a little bit of clearance issue going in there and twisting. It did not want to cycle by hand freely. And I took a little stone and I took the bolt and I kind of polished them down a little bit till I could get enough rounds, you know, just to kind of take that little tiny bit of phase off so that it goes in there and there's enough room. Because you don't want it in there flopping and slopping. Go ahead and see swipes. You don't want it backing up on you, but you do need it to be tight and to fit so that a little bit of thermal expansion won't lock the bolt up. And you have to be able to get it in there and get it moved. Okay. It also was chipping the tips off because the barrel extension was not smooth on the M4 feed ramps. It was almost like a rifle extension on an M4 upper. And of course I bought the upper and I put lots of them and not had any trouble with anybody else's product, but it was clipping the top off and I had to go in there and polish the feed ramps down because it didn't match. The feed ramps didn't match the barrel extension. Now, it was my experience. It also wouldn't cycle, so I had to open it up. And what I did on this particular one is I wanted it to be able to be large enough to cycle boxed ammunition, because I don't want to have to put a cowboy load in there. I don't want to put a bub it up load in there super hot. And I'm not shooting a suppressor on a 16-inch gun, so I don't need the extra back pressure through that size hole that he had put in there in order to do that, which may be exactly why it was the size it was. If you tend to run your ammunition on the warmish side and you tend to run it suppressed where you have an actual effective longer barrel length, it may be just perfect and ideal. But I shoot mine without that. So I had to go in there, open it up to get it to run standard boxed ammunition. Back to this picture. Now what a taper drill is just what it sounds like. It's a drill bit that's taper. It's wider at the top and skinnier at the bottom. So you can take the same taper drill and depending on how deep you run the axis down will determine how big of a hole you end up with at the bottom. So if you measure the hole at the top and you go to the next drill size, wire size drill bit above that, you may actually be going several hole sizes, port sizes that you can put in there at the bottom, which is constricting the gas flow. In other words, if you're going to drill out a barrel and you're not sure what size to do, I buy several sizes sequentially in the numbers of wire size drill bits based upon where I believe it is sized to start with. And if you don't already have the drill bits in the house, if you do, you put in one until it falls through the hole and you put the next size up and very carefully drill that out, because if you happen to jerk the handle of a handheld drill or try to drill too much at one time, what can happen? You might break that bit off, and if it's not through the bottom, you can't drive it through and you can't pull it out and you're just stuck. It's kind of a booger at that point. So I would at that point be able to identify using a standard numbered drill which one is the size that just goes through, and then take the next one, drill it up, go out there, put it together, shoot several rounds through it. Are they locking back? Am I locking every one back? No. Am I locking maybe 1 out of 5 back? Okay, it's on the border. So then what we do, we may go to the next size up. Now, what happens if you happen to get overzealous and take a little bit too much off and you end up with a big port in there and it's kicking back hard? Well, as long as it's not swiping, as long as it's not causing you trouble, as long as it's not causing any kind of sign, you may take some of that recoil out by the overgas issues that you have. Heavier spring, heavier buffer, common sense. You may also put an adjustable gas block on it. In fact, you may, if you're going to open one, you might want to open it up to the weakest ammunition that you're going to shoot, put an adjustable gas block on it so you can tighten it down to your comfort level. Now, what you see here in this picture is an adjustable gas block that I use. It's a Seekins Precision. I will draw your attention to this. I haven't found one more economical than Seekins Precision, and it's a pretty good block. I've got them on a couple of my guns. I put them on there because I want to back them off, or if I'm going to run them with a suppressor. I want them to work kind of job specific, load specific, run specific, so I don't end up all that stuff up in my face. And Seekins Precision makes it a good block for the money. It's good bang for the buck. So the way it works is I will draw your attention to a lot of old pictures they have of the original design, which actually had the locking screw behind the gas block, which is on the gas tube side, which was a booger to tighten back down. They drew a lot of complaints apparently, and they redesigned it so that we actually have the set screw on the front side, as you see here. So we have the actual jet adjustment on the side, and we have the locking screw from the front. So it's a lot easier to do, a lot easier to work with. And I like, if I'm going to have one that I think I might have to adjust, I don't want to have to take off my handle, a handguard, and put it back on. It's strictly a personal choice. If you're going to just dial it in for one round and leave it there, then you can certainly have a handguard that comes over much longer. But if you think you might set one up for a temporary round and you want to have it convenient, you know, if you need to make some, oh my gosh, it's cold, and I got it in my test shot, I didn't cycle because I got it cut off a little bit too much and I don't have a lighter buffer to swap out for it. You might want to have it a little easier to access, either longer set screw Allen wrench, or just have a shorter handguard. So I guess it's time to wrap it up. It's mostly common sense. There can be a lot of anxiety around whether or not you need to open a gas port on a barrel. And one of the ways that I would do it is run through everything I can possibly think of. I would grab as much information from other people as I can possibly get, to different ideas, opinions. I would try different ammunition, okay? If for some reason I don't want to shoot but one load, the other ammunition, all it would be doing for me is giving me a baseline. Is a lighter bullet running a little bit better? Is a heavier bullet? Again, if you didn't load it, you don't know. The lighter bullet that actually clears the barrel faster may actually be operating at a lower pressure. So it's really hard to make too much generalized thought out of it. But swapping ammunition manufactured by different people can make a better symptom. Yes, running, no matter what I'm running in there, it's almost all of it is failing to lock the bolt back behind the catch, and therefore that would lead us to the general idea that we're a little undergassed. Then, would you consider putting a crank? It weighs a little bit out there. About, you know, some of them will weigh close to a pound, because depending on what quality and who made it and how thick the metal is. But they actually increase back pressure. You might even want to have one in your arsenal of tools to check if, in fact, it's a port problem or something else. You can always shoot. You get them, they're not locking back. Put your crank on there, shoot them. Boom, it's working fine, locking back. That may be something that you can use as a diagnostic tool. Okay, swap your magazines out, swap the ammo out. If you're sure that nothing you can do is fixing it, and you've gone back and checked the gas block alignment and hole to see that maybe you got that little bit of ash around the hole, you can tell where it's been sitting. Take it off, always clean that barrel back off, put it back on there, and shoot some more, so that the next printing, the next time you take the gas block off, you can see whether or not you had a little left or a little bit right, and you can go from there. Now, you had adjustable gas blocks. Make sure that you have it opened up a little bit. If you've been shooting suppressed and you've worked with it, but you don't work with the other, you might have an undergas situation. Drill out. If you're going to drill it out, have a plan. Find out, measure as best you can the port side on the upper part with a pair of calipers. Then once you have that, go in and order about 5 on each side of it, maybe 3 on the low side, 5 or more up on the top of it, depending on how far you want to go, of wire-sized drill bits. They usually don't go bad, and you just want to make sure that it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Establish what the hole size actually is, because it'll pass through to the barrel. Okay, go to the very next wire size, open that one up. You're shaving off very little metal when you do that. And as you open that up, step it up, because you can't put it back. At least I can't put it back. Put it back together, run it, shoot some more ammunition. Meanwhile, you're breaking the barrel in and the bolt's getting worked. Everything's loosened up. You might find that that's all you need to do. So, video's long enough. I guess we'll cut it off right here. Appreciate you watching.